Welcome to session 59 of the Law of One. This first part is going to be a conversation of a fascinating topic on Earth population and pyramids. More pyramids. Let's begin. This session is going to start with a question from Jim that has to do with anger. Then we're going to talk about population of Earth, which I believe is the most fascinating topic for me, and all the speculation that we can make out of this. And then it's going to go into pyramids as we study more the spirals of energy in the pyramids. So those of you who love it are going to be excited. Those of you who are tired of pyramids, let me tell you that we still have another second part of session 59, and then session 60 is going to still talk about pyramids at the beginning. But then we take a break from pyramids for a while, I think, or maybe for the rest of the material. I don't remember. But in any case, this session starts with Don asking, as usual, how's Carla? I didn't include those questions here in the slideshow, but Don simply asks, how's Carla? Ra says that she's doing as previously noted, and Don also asks about Carla being tired, but Ra doesn't say anything about that because they say that would be infringing upon the law of Confucian, whatever that may be. It's something that was private or they couldn't disclose, so they didn't respond to that. Then Don asked in question 2 something about Jim moving from where he was sitting, if that would benefit Carla. And Ra said nope, categorically, nothing else, just no. And then we get into the third question, which is the first one I have here. And it's about Jim. Jim is the one asking the question, Don is reading it. And we'll get to that. It has to do with anger, which I believe has a fantastic teaching for all of us, especially if you are like me. So we're gonna get into that with a lot of importance, I would say. There's a lot of importance in this question. So question 3, Don asks, I have a question from Jim that states, I think I have penetrated the mystery of my lifelong anger at making mistakes. I think I have always been aware subconsciously of my abilities to master new learnings, but my desire to successfully complete my mission on Earth has been energized by the Orion group into irrational and destructive anger when I fail. Could you comment on this observation? Ra says, we would suggest that as this entity is aware of its position as a wanderer, it may also consider what pre-incarnative decisions it undertook to make regarding the personal or self-oriented portion of the choosing to be here at this particular time-space. This entity is aware, as stated, that it has great potential, but potential for what? This is the pre-incarnative question. The work of sixth density is to unify wisdom and compassion. This entity abounds in wisdom. The compassion that it is desire of balancing has, as its antithesis, lack of compassion. In the more conscious being, this expresses or manifests itself as lack of compassion for self. We feel this is the sum of suggested concepts for thought which we may offer at this time without infringement. So, Ra picks its words very careful. And first of all, let's get into Jim's question. This is something I'm very familiar with because I could say that I identify myself as somebody like that, or at least I used to identify myself as somebody like that. And I can, at this point in my process, I can still see the behaviors bubbling, but I don't allow them, of course, to fester, say, in me. They just bubble, and I just see them as the thoughts that they are. But before getting into my own experience, Jim is asking about his propensity of getting angry when he fails at something, because he knows his potential. So this, again, is when we feel frustrated by not accomplishing something, knowing that we can do way better, that we can do things better, that we have that potential, but we get frustrated and angry. And another important part of Jim's question is that he includes the Orion group as part of the element that exacerbates this behavior in him. Now let's pick the words that Ra use here, because I think it's important. They say, we would suggest that as this entity is aware of its position as a wanderer, it may also consider what pre-incarnative decisions it undertook to make regarding the personal or self-oriented portion of the choosing to be here at this particular time space, which means think about or reflect on your decisions as to why you came here, knowing that you're a wanderer. Why did you come here? What was your purpose? This is something that only you can answer, of course. And so reflect on that. Become aware of what were your decisions to come here. You can feel this. This is you. I mean, you don't have to go to a guru or read books or watch YouTube videos to find this out. You only need to ask yourself. And so what we find is that so they say this entity is aware, as stated, that it has a great potential, but potential for what? So this is, again, trying to poke Jim into asking himself that question. And Ra says, potential for what? This is the pre-incarnative question. Potential for what? What did you bring to the table here? What is it that it is that you brought? And so on the second paragraph, they say the work of sixth density is to unify wisdom and compassion. So I think they let the cat out of the bag here with saying that maybe Jim is sixth density, because that's the work of sixth density. But again, no, I'm speculating, because this could also be fifth density. The work of sixth density is what you're trying to understand in fifth density, right? Just like we're trying to understand love and compassion, which is the work in fourth density, or the status in fourth density. And the same thing happens from 56, so I don't know. In any case, Ra says that this entity abounds in wisdom, so that's an overabundance of wisdom, of which I am also very familiar with. And this doesn't mean that I have a lot of wisdom, but rather that there is an imbalance between wisdom and compassion in myself. And I'm talking about myself now. But this is Jim as well. I think we all can relate to this. And I'll mention something else at the end of this paragraph. And so the compassion that it is desirous of balancing has as its antithesis. So basically saying that the compassion that Jim wants has as a manifestation of its opposite a lack of compassion. So this is our behavior when we get angry with ourselves, when we get frustrated, is a lack of compassion for the weaknesses of the self, or those things. Again, weakness is not something like a disability. It's a potential for strengthening, right? We're not talking about human weakness or physical weakness. We're talking about metaphysical one. And so in the more conscious being, this expresses or manifests itself as lack of compassion for self. That's what I just mentioned right now. We feel this is the sum of suggested concepts for thought. Okay, so this is all we can say before infringing upon Jim's free will. So as a true master that Ra is just giving the tools and showing those things that they see. And the take home here that we can take is the lack of compassion that we can have with ourselves when we get frustrated with the things that we know we can do better. And you see, This is the opposite of what we talked about before, and I think it was session 44, 45, where we talk about the martyr syndrome, which is the opposite, is an abundance of compassion and a lack of wisdom. That manifests as somebody who wants to just give itself. They're very naive, they're too compassionate, they're weak or sensitive rather to external stimuli and manipulation and all of this. This is the martyrdom effect that this imbalance has. So this is the opposite. This is the wisdom weakness, that it lacks compassion, and that manifests, of course, with others when it's exacerbated to that point. And you can see how in the healing process, and I can speak this for this myself, is that in the reversal process, let me call it the reversal process of, I used to treat other people with lack of compassion because of my own frustration of, I would project myself out there. And what happens is that you stop doing that because you realize how harmful that is for others. But you don't realize how harmful it is for you, and you continue to do it to yourself. But then you catch yourself doing it to yourself, and then you just allow it to be. And you don't enter into conflict with it. You just allow it to be. If you're angry, then you're angry and you observe it. You're frustrated, and you observe it. This is the process of becoming aware of your own lack of compassion. And so naturally, what balances it out is compassion for self. You begin to see the entity frustrated, just like you would see a child that is frustrated, and you don't treat it with disdain or some negative energy, let's just call it. So you begin to have compassion for yourself. One of the things that I think is clarified here is that Jim mentions the Orion group, and Ra has nothing to say about the Orion group. This reminds me of people who, when first presented with the raw material, and hey, I'm here, that was me at the beginning, I would think that a lot of the things that were happening to me were propitiated by the Orion group. And I never felt completely under attack, but I felt that a lot of those things were the influence of the Orion group. But the truth of the matter is that while the Orion group makes use of your weaknesses, they don't provoke the weaknesses. You are your own weakness. And likewise, you are your own healer and strengthener. So this is all about you. It has nothing to do with the Orion group. I get a lot of people asking me or saying, I feel like I'm under attack by the Orion group. I think the Orion group has it for me because I keep having these dreams, and the dreams are of negative this and that. All the Orion group can do is distort that which exists. Distort it further. So if you have some weakness or sensitivity, they will make use of that. But you are the one originating it. So you see here, Ra makes no mention of this because they go straight to the source, and the source of all of this is Jim. So how does Jim feel about himself? And I think this is a much more insightful way than, and I love it from the different channelings and the people that make readings on you and so on, where they will externalize things and they won't go to the heart of the essence of it, which is you, and explore yourself, right? I think that's the most efficient way to become aware of your own evolved soul, and from there then take charge. So this is really appropriate for people who are at least those who are like Jim or me, who have had this issue in the past and what's begging is just more compassion with the self. Forget about compassion with others without compassion for the self. You're working backwards here, which is, I mean, I'm not saying don't have compassion for others, of course. I'm saying that forget about it if you don't have compassion for yourself. So whenever you catch yourself being nasty at you or feeling down because of some self-judgment, then try to seek the antithesis of that lack of compassion, which is compassion, is love, is understanding, is nurturing of the self. So, all right, we go into question 4, and here we're going to get into the fascinating population questions. Don says, at the end of the second major cycle, there were a few 100,000 people incarnate on Earth. There are over 4 billion incarnate today. Were the 4 billion people who incarnate today, were they in the Earth planes but not incarnate at that time, or did they come in from elsewhere during the last 25,000 year cycle? So Ra says there were 3 basic divisions of origin of these entities. Firstly, and primarily, those of the planetary sphere you call Maldek, having become able to take up third density once again, were gradually loosed from self-imposed limitations of form. Secondly, there were those of other third density entrants or neophytes whose vibratory patterns matched the Terran experiential nexus. These then filtered in through incarnative processes. I feel like I'm reading today really choppy. Let me self-correct that. Deep breath. So the question is about the origin of the souls we have here on Earth, population. And let's do a recap because we haven't talked about this in a long time, probably since session 20s at the closest, definitely in the teens. But all right, the recap is as follows. Third density starts and it runs for 75,000 years. It is divided into 3 major cycles. The 75,000 year cycle being a great cycle, or at least that's the nomenclature that we use in the Law of One. It's also called the Great Year and perhaps the Yugas in the Hindu system. But in any case, we're talking about Law of One. This is 25,000 year cycle. And we are at the end of the Great Cycle, the 75,000 year cycle, and of course the third major cycle ending as well, because that's just the end. This is the end of the end. The end of third density, of course. The apocalypse is here, the revealing, the unveiling, the removal of the veil of forgetting. So much we can say about that. I have a series running which is called Concepts of the Law of One, and I recently talked about the veil of forgetting. Go watch it if you haven't. I'll probably forget to leave a link here. If not, then you'll watch it here. If not, go look it up, veil of forgetting. Fascinating stuff. So, Don asks about the, they said that at the second, so we got to start here. Let's say that the second major cycle ended 25,000 years ago, right? 50,000 years into third density. There were at that time a few 100,000 people on Earth. However, over the last 25,000 years, this is what Don is asking, we have now 4 billion right now. So his question is, where were the over, this confuses me, were the over 4 billion people who are incarnate today, were they, because it's a conversation, of course, and it looks like, I would think the where there was where did they came from? But okay, so were these 4 billion people? Now compare 100,000, right, 6 figure, with 4 billion. Now that's I can't How many figures is that? Is that 3, 6, 9, 12? I don't know, 11, something like that. So 100,000 versus 4 billion. That's a lot. So where did they come from? Did they come from elsewhere during the last 25,000 years? And Ross says that there were 3 basic divisions of origin. I don't think I read, no, the second paragraph. Okay, so there were 3 basic divisions. The first one primarily is from Maldek. Recap here, remember Maldek is or was the planet between Mars and Jupiter, and which apparently now, this is not said in the Law of One, but we can deduce this, that the asteroid belt is the remnants of this Maldek planet. And some people say that the comets are actually parts of the sea or the waters that once inundated Maldek. So it was a 3rd density planet, exploded because the people were belligerent in their nature, or at least their development. And so all this population was taken to by the Confederation after there's a long discussion. I'll probably leave a link here for Maldek. Let me just leave notes so I don't forget. But these Maldekians destroy their planet, and then again, go watch the videos if you haven't, or if you want to refresh on the whole story. But they were brought here to Earth, and they incarnated as Bigfoot, or at least what Don called Bigfoot. Ross said that they didn't like much of the term Bigfoot for this, but that was the closest we got, I think. And so they used it, but what they said was that they were enclosed in a 2nd density body. By their own free will, they decided to be incarnate in 2nd density bodies. Much more advanced, of course, than simple insects and mammals and so on, but definitely not 3rd density humans here on Earth. And you know that what happened to them, I don't know. People can speculate all they want, but the thing is that they were brought here. Okay, so as they became more, this is where we return to the paragraph and the answer of question 4, where Ra says that having become able to take up 3rd density form, I'm adding this here, once again were gradually loosed from self-imposed limitations of form. You see, that self-imposed limitation of form is what I said, that through their free will they decided to be in 2nd density vehicles. And so they were gradually let out of this self-imposed limitation of form, and so they incarnated as humans. Secondly, there were those of other 3rd density entrants, or neophytes, whose vibratory patterns matched the Terran experiential nexus. So these enter through incarnative processes. This second category are those who are coming from other planets here, and they are coming because they match the vibratory pattern of 3rd density. Now, I'm not sure, actually I am at least aware that, because this can mean 2 things, okay? Remember, 2nd density entities graduate to 3rd density. If they are like from the planet of Deneb, which is in session 10 or session 13, somewhere around there, that planet, for some reason, because of the sun was dying or something like that, they had to go into 3rd density on another planet, and they were transported here, or they were transferred here. So they were fresh 2nd density graduates to 3rd density. So does that mean these are those plus others? Or does this also include repeaters from other planets? So entities who don't make the graduation after 75,000 years, which is the vast majority on planet Earth so far as we know it. Just like the people here in third density will have to repeat on another planet, so from other planets they came here. And I believe this second category includes both. That's my speculation. It's not explicit here, but I would think that. And so the last part of this answer is Ra saying, thirdly, this is the third category, they say, in the past approximate 200 of your years, you have experienced much visiting of the wanderers. It may be noted that all possible opportunities for incarnation are being taken at this time due to your harvesting process and the opportunities which this offers. So, wanderers, again, we knew from 1981 when Ra was channeled that we had around 65 million wanderers. How many more wanderers do we have now? Well, we have an answer from Kuo, which I won't reveal yet, but we have an idea. Plus, the population, this deserves a video on its own, just really talking about all of this. But let's glance over the numbers. And the numbers get more interesting as Don asks the next question, so I'm not gonna keep talking as we read Don's question 5. He says, just to clarify that, could you tell me approximately how many total mind-body-spirit complexes were transferred to Earth at the beginning of this last 75,000 year period? So, this is the last 25,000 years if I read his question properly. Ra says, the transfer, as you call it, has been gradual. Over 2 billion souls are those of Maldek, which have successfully made the transition. Approximately 1.9 billion souls have, from many portions of the creation, entered into this experience at various times. The remainder are those who have experienced the first 2 cycles upon this sphere, or who have come in at some point as wanderers. Some wanderers haven't been in this sphere for many thousands of your years, others haven't come far more recently. Well, we have numbers, which I love. Now, let's talk about 1981, and then we'll extrapolate to present day. And we only have one number, which is relevant. Okay. 1981, we had around 4.5 billion people on Earth. That was the population back then. Now we're close to 8 billion, 7.5 or so. But let's work with the numbers in 1981. We had over 2 billion souls. So half of the planet in 1981 was from Maldek. So is this Earth or Maldek? Well, that's a good question, right? That's a huge number, my friend. That's a huge number. Then, if that wasn't enough, approximately 1.9 billion souls. So let's round that up to 2 billion. We have 4 point odd, whatever the over on the 2 billion souls of Maldek is. We have over 4 billion souls that are not native to this planet. Oh, wow. From many portions of the creation, they have entered into this experience at various times. Now, I know you may be asking, Gabe, how could you say that? You're being discriminating. You know, no. I'm using it for scientific purposes here to talk about consciousness and the consciousness of this planet, plus the beauty. The beauty of Earth. It's just fantastic. It's such a privilege to be among this madness that we live in. All right, so Ra continues and says, the remainder, and I mean, if we talk about remainder, I'm so eager to find what's the actual number. Let's find out. Let's do it together. 1981 population Earth. What do we have? In 1981, the exact number was 4.5. Yeah, I mean that's That's a fair roundup. It's 4.536996. So it doesn't matter. 4.5 billion. So the other 300. I don't know why I get the number 300. Yeah. Of those, 65 million were wanderers. This is our number that Ra gave us at that time. And that was 65 million. So I just don't know how many millions are from this sphere, right? Because that's the third category. The remainder are those who have experienced the first two cycles upon this sphere. Okay, so Earth natives, or who have come in at some point as wanderers. And some wanderers been here for thousands of years. That only shows that wanderers have been here for thousands of years, but their influx is only recent. Their not influx, but the majority of influx of wanderers is coming from recent years. Now, again, this is splitting the population of Earth. Of the vast majority is not from Earth. Now, why did I make the joke of me probably sounding a little bit like discriminating? Well, first of all, I don't even know if I'm from Maldek. I could be, so I'm not laughing at anybody in particular. I'm laughing at what's the phrase? The melting pot that Earth is at this point, having population from Maldek, which destroyed their planet. I believe part of that 1.9 billion souls from other portions of the creation must be including the one from Mars. I don't know why Rod didn't mention Mars here, but it must be included there, because that was a lot of people too. And I don't know how big their population was, but Maldek was definitely a huge population for some reason. That is crazy, the amount of people that were there. It's a good question to know if there were wanderers in Maldek at the time of explosion. So many questions, I mean, we could ask, but I don't think they're that relevant to soul evolution, just curiosity for us. But in any case, we're talking about the vast majority, if not all, of population on Earth. This is 1981. Now we have almost double the amount, should I call it, like another 3 billion people on Earth for the past 40 years. So in the last 40 years, we have had a tremendous amount of people coming in. Now, I was curious about if we had information of the Confederation stating recent numbers on the wanderers, and as of 2018 March, I will leave a link to that channel link in the description if you're interested. Kuo said that the amount of wanderers here in 2018 was about 350 million. So we haven't increased that much in wanderers. That's been from 65, 300 millions almost. And I would think at this time we're getting close to the 300 and something highest 390s, maybe 380s. I don't know. But this number of wanderers is not. Let's see. It has increased at least 5 times, right? That would be over, maybe even 6 times over what was in 1981. And the population of Earth has increased almost double. So we have 350 million wanderers here. Where are the others coming from is a good question. It is important to remember that after the threshold of 2012, we have even more graduates from third density coming from other parts of the planet of the galaxy, and maybe other galaxies, who knows. But at least from our galaxy, most likely our neighboring stars, third density planets who made the transition into fourth density, they can choose where to go, and they're coming here for an early 4th density experience. So we have a lot of those too. This is also, I believe, in the channeling of Kuo that I have there, and again, you know where to find it. So the population of Earth is mixed, to say the least. We have Maldek, Mars, we have wanderers, we have graduates from other planets, we have natives, and we have graduates from 2nd density to 3rd density coming into planet. Now, what does this all mean? Why am I rambling on all of this? Because you have to understand the consciousness of the planet, which Ra mentioned over 40 years ago was very orange ray oriented, which means that they're very self-oriented. This is the nature of consciousness on planet Earth. This is going to change over time as those who didn't make the graduation from Maldek or Mars are going to repeat. It's going to change as more graduates from 3rd density come into planet Earth for 4th density. The reason why a vast majority of them are coming here is because we need to populate this Earth, this 4th density planet. And if the graduates or the potential graduates, the students of planet Earth are not making the transition, then guess what? Other parts of the creation are going to come here and populate the planet. So at present, we're looking at a very, very intense orange and yellow ray population dissipating gradually as the 4th density transition happens, and they can no longer sustain this. I just recorded a podcast talking about this particular topic of the dissolution of the global ego. I call it the collective ego meltdown. And this transition is making it very difficult for the 3D repeaters that are going to have to repeat and that are simply not seeing the truth of our reality, that we're unity and we have war still. I mean, it's unbelievable that in 2022 we still have war. That's just so obsolete and outdated. It feels shameful to a degree that we humans are still at war. We got rid of slavery, but we still have war. That doesn't pan out in consciousness. So why is this? Because we haven't make up the lessons here. So again, I can talk about this for a while, but I just wanted to emphasize the point that the population of Earth, distinct from other planets, is very mixed, and their consciousness is all mixed with us. This is why also, and this is the last point I would highlight here, is that we are also sensitive to their consciousness. In fact, we as entities, no matter if we're wanderers or repeaters or graduates from 3rd or 2nd density, it doesn't matter. We are aware entities. We are aware, at least to the point that we can understand this philosophy, that we can understand this taxonomy of the creation. And if we are able to do this, we are able to perceive our responsibility as people who are sensitive and open-hearted enough to admit and take charge of those things that are us, that make us and that are really not us, but we're absorbing from the consciousness. So our propensities, anxieties, depressions, and so on, all of this is the energy that we're taking to ourselves and transmuting it. Again, independent of our origin, I don't think that's useful. The only thing that brands us as conscious entities is our awareness of consciousness. And consciousness, I mean the global consciousness, and of our own makeup, our own weaknesses and our sensitivities and the things that we consider to be negative, the darkness in us, let's just put it that way. So anyhow, I think I rambled enough on this. Let's go into question 6 and change topics. Let's go to pyramids again. Don says, I'm trying to understand the 3 spirals of light in the pyramid shape. I would like to question on each. The first spiral starts below the Queen's Chamber and ends in the Queen's Chamber. Is that correct? Ra says, this is incorrect. The first notion of upward spiraling light is as that of the scoop. The light energy being scooped in through the attraction of the pyramid shape through the bottom or base. Thus, the first configuration is a semi-spiral. Okay, so let's do a refresher on pyramids now. Alright, so Don is really interested in the workings of the energy inside the pyramid, that light that is being funneled by the shape of the pyramid. And he makes a statement saying, or question, that the first spiral ends at the Queen's Chamber. This is not so, as we have explored in previous images, and I forgot if it was session 56, 57, 55, somewhere around there. I talked about the pyramids, and we showed that little image of that Jim made, actually, Jim McCarthy, and that I kind of doodled in my board. But what's really important here is to see that the pyramid acts as a funnel of energy, and the first is a semi-spiral coming from the bottom, from the resonating chamber underneath the pyramid, right? And from here it starts to concentrate the prana, the light, intelligent energy, and it forms a semi-spiral. So that would be the first configuration that Ra is talking about here, and this is the first notion of upward spiraling light. The first notion of upward spiraling light is something that they're going to clarify in a little bit, so I won't talk about that. But this is the scooping. It's a concentration, focusing of the energy. The light energy being scooped in through the attraction of the pyramid shape through the bottom or base. This is a good moment to refresh on the idea that it is the shape of the pyramid that causes the concentration of energy, and not the pyramid itself as it is built, from solid material and this and that. It's just the shape. We have found, and I'll make this remark here, we have found these shapes everywhere in our biology, in our firing of neurons. You can see these patterns being created. The pattern I'm talking about is an octahedron, which, again, the pyramid is a tetrahedron, an octahedron being 2 pyramids, right? But we find the same shape. The photon itself has a star tetrahedron, which is 2 tetrahedrons, one upside down and the other one intersecting the other. So we have that in our photon. The photon is what creates everything. So what we're talking about here is that geometry is intrinsically the generator of I don't want to use the word matter, but the geometry is the one that generates the coherence, the harmony, right? That is needed for anything to exist, from atoms to people to planets and all the way up to the universe itself is geometrically arrayed in that. Even the galaxies have a beautiful position in, guess what? Octahedrons, 2 tetrahedrons. So in any case, I don't know why I'm going on a rant here, but it's the pyramid, the shape of the pyramid itself that causes this funneling of energy. It's just creating coherence. That's all you have to know here. The pyramid is creating coherence of the infinite or nigh infinite abundance of energy that exists in the universe. So we'll explore that further. Question 7. Don says, would this be similar to the vortex you get when you release the water from a bathtub? So this is that circling of the water as we release it from the bathtub. Ra says, this is correct, except that in the case of this action, the cause is gravitic, whereas in the case of the pyramid, the vortex is that of upward spiraling light being attracted by the electromagnetic fields engendered by the shape of the pyramid. So again, the shape of the pyramid is what's causing this this focusing of light, right? The vortex, and while the water in the bathtub is a phenomenon on gravity pulling down and causing this spiral, in the pyramid is the shape that causes the upward spiraling light that is attracted by the electromagnetic vibration or coherence that the shape creates. So the electromagnetic field that it creates is the one that in fact gives coherence to the energy. And so geometry is very important. That's why we have sacred geometry. So we're going to explore further here. Question 8, Don says, then the first spiral after this semi-spiral is the spiral used for study and healing, relative to the Queen's Chamber position. Where does this first spiral begin and end? Ra says, the spiral which is used for study and healing begins at or slightly below the Queen's Chamber position, depending upon your earth and cosmic rhythms. It moves through the King's Chamber's position in a sharply delineated form and ends at the point whereby the top approximate third of the pyramid may be seen to be intensifying the energy. So from the bottom comes the funneling of the energy, the first semi-spiral. That first semi-spiral ends at the bottom of the Queen's Chamber or at the Queen's Chamber, right? So that spiral is ending there, that semi-spiral. At that point, it's opening what is called the first spiral. That first spiral goes through the Queen's Chamber and the King's Chamber and ends above the King's Chamber. That would be those chambers that are on top of the King's Chamber, I believe. And these spirals, or this spiral, this first spiral, is the one that is used for healing, studying, and initiation. That I mentioned initiation, but I suppose studying is a form of initiation, or initiation is a form of study. In any case, we know that the Queen's Chamber is used for initiation. So initiation, study, and healing are the properties of this first spiral that ends above the King's Chamber, still within the pyramid. So that's how it works. I don't think there's much to say here. It depends on, but that's only where it begins. This first spiral could be at or slightly below the Queen's Chamber, depending on our earth and cosmic rhythms. I'm not sure how that affects it, or how that influence causes it to slightly begin a higher or lower level, but that's beyond my pay rate. Don says in the next question, now, the first spiral is obviously different somehow than the second and third spirals, since they have different uses and different properties. The second spiral then starts at the end of the first spiral and goes up, I assume, to the apex of the pyramid. Is that correct? Ra says this is partially correct. The large spiral is drawn into the vortex of the apex of the pyramid. However, some light energy, which is the more intense nature, is of the more intense nature of the red, shall we say, end of the spectrum, is spiral once again, causing an enormous strengthening and focusing of energy, which is then of use for building. So this is the second spiral, if I read that correctly. The second spiral then starts at the end of the first and goes up to the apex, and that is correct, partially correct. I don't know why partially correct, but what matters is that this spiral goes from the top of the King's Chamber all the way to the apex of the pyramid. And maybe this is the partially correct part of it, and the incorrect part is because some light energy, which is of the more intense nature of the red end of the spectrum, is spiraled once again, causing an enormous strengthening and focusing of energy, which is then used for building. So you see, in the pyramid, they didn't make use of this, and we'll see why. I'm not sure how this energy can be used for building. This is the second spiral again within the pyramid, right before it leaves the pyramid at the apex, at the top. And this is because of the nature of the red end of the spectrum, which is intensified at this point. So I need more information here. I don't know if they talk about this later on, but this is the use for building in the light energy that is produced in the pyramid. Some of you pyramid junkies can tell me a little bit about this. I know that the studies that people make or have made in the pyramid of Giza is just fantastic, and it does resonate a lot with what Ra says here. So it's a little bit more of historical context on the external, whereas he and the raw material were talking about the inner works of the pyramid and the reason why they were created. What other uses they did or had with the pyramid, I don't know, weren't vouched by the Confederation. Certainly not by Ra. So in any case, question 10, Don says, and then the third spiral radiates from the top of the pyramid. Is this correct? Ra says the third complete spiral does so. This is correct. It is well to reckon with the foundation semi-spiral, which supplies the prana for all that may be affected by the three following upward spiralings or spirals of light. So just a little reminder there from Ra that it is well to reckon with the foundation with the foundation semi-spiral. So basically the semi-spiral at the bottom that supplies the prana, that intensification, that focusing of energy. So the spirals form with the top part of it for all that may be affected by the three following upward spirals of light. So there is a relationship. They don't talk about the relationship that exists between the semi-spiral, which is the one that accumulates everything and supplies the prana, and the top of the pyramid, that third spiral that starts actually at the apex of the pyramid and goes up, radiates out, and that's the one we use for energizing. For example, that small pyramid practice or use that we can have with small pyramid to energize the body, no more than 20 minutes or 30 minutes, Ra says. So let's go on with pyramids. Question 11, Don says, now I am trying to understand what happens in this process. I'll call the first semi-spiral 0 position and the other 3 spirals 1, 2, and 3. The first spiral being study and healing. What change takes place in light from the 0 position into the first spiral that makes that first spiral available for healing and study? Really good question. Ra says the prana scooped in the pyramid shape gains coherence of energetic direction. The term upward spiraling light is an indication not of your up and down concept, but an indication of the concept of that which reaches towards the source of love and light. Thus, all light or prana is upward spiraling, but its direction, as you understand this term, is unregimented and not useful for work. So, a little bit of a confusing answer here from Ra, because Don is asking, the question is phenomenal, I think. He wants to know what happens to light that differentiates the different spirals. Why are they different from each other, the spirals themselves? And so I think this has to do with the nature of the changes in the usefulness of energy within the spirals, as there can be many, infinite perhaps, and I have my reason to believe that. But this is the question that Don asks, what changes in the light from spiral to spiral, basically. For example, that one is useful for healing and studying, and that would be the first one. Again, I have my speculation, but first, what Ra says is that the prana scooped by the pyramid shape gains coherence of energetic direction. What is this energetic direction? Well, first, see how they say the upward spiraling light is an indication of the concept that reaches towards the source of love and light, which is the Creator. It is not our up and down, it has nothing to do with that. So all light or prana is actually upward spiraling, but the direction, as we understand it, is unregimented and not useful for work. This is the part that confuses me. When they say is unregimented and not useful for work. Maybe some of you know how to decipher this one. I honestly don't. I know that the upward spiraling concept, is upward spiraling, but its direction, as we understand it, is unregimented and not useful for work. I mean, I understand that it's unregimented, that it doesn't have a direction in our 3 coordinates of space, our 3-dimensional space. That makes sense to me. Why it's not useful for work? Maybe because it's just pure. It's simply there, just like, okay, so prana is this sea of space that exists. As long as there is space, there is prana. That is just the nature of this, our reality. The fabric of reality is pure prana. So that is unregimented and not useful for work, I suppose. That's my best guess here. Because usefulness, it's snowing and it's April. And yeah, it's still snowing here in Pennsylvania. That's fantastic. I love it. And flowers don't care. Flowers just keep coming out and they say, we're here, it's spring, we don't care about the snow. This forest is just magical. Anyhow, we're talking about this, right? So the upper spiraling light is simply the prana that is there, right? This is the best guess I can make. And its direction is unregimented and not useful for work, but when we put it into work with a shape, like the pyramid, then it creates something. And I think we're going to explore that a little bit, so I won't get ahead of myself. But that, I think this is what Ra is mentioning here in terms of, this really doesn't answer Don's question. Not directly, but at least they're giving the indication that the energy itself is useful for work once it goes into the process of concentration in a specific shape. And that would change. I don't know. I really don't know why they didn't answer Don's question directly, but just gave this answer. But that's all we can get here. It's not a direction that we know here, the upper spiraling light. We know that the upper spiraling light actually is just the call from the Creator, and that call is manifested as evolution of energy. As I have explained several times, I'd like to see this creation as energy, simple energy that is moving through this upward spiraling light, and in its wake it's creating matter, beings, animals, angels, planets, stars, black holes, and so on. And that is just the nature of creation, the upward spiraling lights. That's what it creates. But when we want to use it for work, then we need to concentrate it somehow. And that concentration is what we'll get into, at least before we end the session. I mean, this first part, we're going to have to leave a lot material of pyramids for the second part. So, question 12. Don says, could I assume then that from all points in space, light radiates in our illusion outward in a 360 solid angle? In this scoop shape with the pyramid, then creates the coherence to this radiation as a focusing mechanism. Is this correct? We know that this is precisely correct, as Ra said. So question 13. Then the first spiral has a different factor of cohesion, you might say, than the second. What is the difference between this first and second spiral? Here's the question. Ra says, as the light is funneled into what you term the zero position, it reaches the point of turning. This acts as a compression of the light, multiplying tremendously its coherence and organization. So we have a little bit more of an indication here. First, in question 12, Don simply asked what I have explained already, that he's just verifying that the concentration of energy is due to the pyramid, and that simply acts as a funnel for this, meaning that the prana is emanating from every single point as we know it. It's not really emanating, I would say. I think that's a useful way to visualize it, but I like to say that, you see, this is an ocean of prana. We live in an ocean of prana. This is the whole universe. It includes everything, black matter, dark energy, whatever we want to call it. All of that, it's prana. Prana is there, at least from my understanding. And, it's just sitting there, not doing anything. It is until consciousness starts to, this is the collapsing of the wave function. We collapse reality. When you close your eyes, everything goes away. It's only when you open your eyes and see it that you collapse it again. And you say, oh, there it is. It's there again. You close your eyes, you open them again. A kid notes this. You see a kid playing, they do this. They're collapsing everything and they're releasing it and collapsing it and releasing it, and they have fun. They laugh. We can do that too. So in any case, that's the prana emanating 360 all around us, and the pyramid is just making it available for work. As Ra is mentioning here, following up on Don's question, when Don asked about the difference between the first and second spiral, and Ra says, as the light is funneled into what you term the 0 point, or the zero position, which is that first confluence of energy at the top of the semi-spiral, or the beginning of the first spiral, which starts at the Queen's Chamber or around there. And Ra says this acts as a compression of the light, multiplying tremendously its coherence and organization. So this coherence and organization starts at the 0 point that Don called the 0 point at the semi-spiral, right? And then that multiplies it tremendously in coherence and organization. Now keep those words in mind, because, well, Don is going to mention them again here in question 14, where he says, then is the coherence and organization multiplied once more at the start of the second spiral? Is there just a doubling effect or an increasing effect? Good question. Ra says, this is difficult to discuss in your language. There is no doubling effect, but a transformation across boundaries of dimension, so that light, which was working for those using it in space-time, time-space configuration, becomes light working in what you might consider an interdimensional time-space, space-time configuration. This causes an apparent diffusion and weakness of the spiraling energy. However, in position 2, as you have called it, much work may be done interdimensionally. I believe this is the portion of, spoiler alert, I'm talking about this session, or maybe next session. I forget where, I think it's this session when they talk about aging, which we know it's an effect in the pyramids. That's why they later used them as tombs, because they thought, they could live forever there. Superstitions. Hey, listen, once you don't pay attention to the law of one in Egypt and you forget what it was about, you start doing some irrational stuff like thinking you can preserve the dead there. Anyhow, far from me to criticize. I don't know what they did. They said that's the reason. Certainly not the pyramid at Giza, the Great Pyramid. That was done for initiation, healing, and all of that stuff. But maybe down the line they forgot what it was the use for, and they just said, oh, let's just put dead people in there. And they built pyramids for that, which are very different than the Giza pyramid. Anyhow, we have a very heavy answer here, and we'll have to end it with this question. So, where do we start? Don says that he speculates, he guesses that the energy, once it reaches the top of the spiral, the first spiral, then it doubles or increases its effect for the second spiral. And Roth says that he doesn't say, or they don't say, that this is correct or incorrect. They just say that it's very difficult to discuss in our language. Why? Because if you read this, you can see, well, first they're saying that there is no doubling effect, but a transformation across boundaries of dimension, so that light which was working for those using it in the physical, basically, to the metaphysical, becomes light that is useful for the metaphysical interdimensionally, from the metaphysical to the physical configuration. So what does this all mean? I'm going to give you one illustration, my mind illustration, how I see it. I'm going to first tell you what I can read directly to this, and second, I'm going to give you my illustration. So, Ra also says that this causes an apparent diffusion and weakness of the spiraling energy, apparent from the physical. Remember, if it's apparent, it is from the physical, not from the metaphysical. So the diffusion and weakness of the spiraling energy in the second spiral, it seems to us like it's losing energy, but in fact, it's because it's being useful for metaphysical purposes. That's why they say, in position 2, much work may be done interdimensionally, metaphysically. Now, what do I read directly from this? Once we reach the second spiral, the energy becomes useful from time-space to space-time. Whereas in the first spiral, and we can definitely click this in, it was useful for space-time into time-space. Why? Studying, healing, initiation, all of these have to do with the manifested form into the unmanifested form. It's work done from the physical to the metaphysical, right? So the first spiral does that work, is from the physical to the metaphysical. Whereas in the second one, it reverts itself. And why is it used for building? I don't know. Because this, could this have to do with the building of the pyramids as well? That energy? Maybe. I have a speculation in my illustration in a little bit, and which you can see in my board doodled up there. But this is what they're saying. There is a physical usefulness of the first spiral, from physical to metaphysical, from visible to invisible, and then the opposite at the top for interdimensional work. Now, what do I see here? I see that there is a relationship, if you pay attention to what the work is being done within the pyramid. There is the foundation, the root of the pyramid, supplying prana. You see? What else do we have in our model that is supplying prana to an object? Let's call ourselves an object. The body. The body gets from its roots the prana, right? From Muladhara, from the root chakra, red ray energy center. This is just like the pyramid. Now, what is the first work we do in the pyramid? We do study, initiation, healing. All of that is related to the 3 lower energy centers: red, orange, and yellow. Sounds familiar? So healing happens in those 3, initiation happens in those 3, and learning obviously happens in those 3. What other thing we know? These 3 energy centers are equal to the physical, to the manifested form. Okay, so what is the second spiral? The second spiral starts, I would call, at the heart of the pyramid, just like at the heart of ourselves. And now we're talking about metaphysical. Go to the densities of consciousness and you will see the same thing. Matter is only perceived as matter up to 3rd density. On 4th density, we become light bodies. So this is the transcendence from the physical to the metaphysical. Same thing that is happening in the pyramid. So these two energy centers, green and blue, are the ones that are used in spiritual work, interdimensional work. Does that sound familiar to what we just read? I think it's a perfect analogy to what we're seeing. And the energy centers are a good mirror here for the pyramid work. Now, I would even go further to say that the indigo ray is equal to the apex of the pyramid. In fact, in the last session, Ra mentioned that those who bend metal and do other things, they're using the same type of energy as the top of the pyramid, which is the one that they use for bending metals and levitating and all of this stuff, which is only useful in 4th, 5th, and 6th density. Not here, but they remember. And so, snow's hitting hard. So we have a lot of snow. This indigo ray is equal to the apex. And what else happens at the apex? There is an energizing. That would be, to me, equal to the violet ray, that aura that is created. That overabundance of energy that is created at the top, which is energizing. So, again, I don't know how useful this may be for the studying of pyramids, but it's a clear relationship that I find, and I wanted to mention it here. So, with that, I'm going to cut it here. This is going to be the end of first part. We have at least 10 more questions, all about pyramids for part 2, and conclusions. 2 things that are important for me. We talk about pyramids a lot, so I won't mention pyramids at the conclusions here. But the 2 things that fascinated me of this first part were, first, the anger management. This is real anger management, which is, how do you manage it? With compassion, with love of yourself. You are only getting angry at yourself. You see, I recently had, I'll give you a little anecdote of what happened to me. I played a song of a girl that dedicated me this song. She broke my heart. And I felt, you know what it is when romantically you get your heart broken. Such a beautiful song. And it elicited in me this feeling, this sensation. In the past, I would have associated it with I haven't, fully let go of this girl. I love her. And that is a way of saying it. Now, what was really happening, and I realized this is just about a week ago, not even. What was really happening is that, and I realized that, I haven't played this song in a while, so I recently, just played it, and I said, wow, what is flowing now, my understanding of it is much broader than before. Limited still, but broader. And I realized that I was in love with myself because of the story. I know you hear a lot that you're only in love with yourself, with the other person. You only love yourself when you are with the other person. But who is you? Well, who you are is the story that you're telling yourself at the moment. So, were you in love with the person you were at the time? Or were you in love, more accurately, with the story you were telling yourself that you were next to that person? That's what was happening. So, in any case, I was just projecting myself onto her as a story. And that's why she broke my heart. She broke my story. That story was false. So, you see, this is the same thing that happens when we get angry with other people. Oh, we can say, I'm angry at the other person. Just like you can say, oh, I'm in love with the other person. No, you're angry at the story that you're telling yourself of the other person. So what's left is compassion. Just like in my case, what was left was the balance of love that I had. The balance of love was of the possibility, at least that's how I manage it, the tremendous capacity that we have to create stories, fantastic stories, beautiful stories that we can incarnate and live within an incarnation. It's almost like a holographic projection of ourselves into something that doesn't exist, but we enjoy it. When we do it ignorantly, we suffer. When we do it knowingly, then we enjoy it. And so anger can be seen that way. So, in terms of anger, frustration, speaking from a point where I'm still looking at this, my best advice at this is that you only see it, you observe it. Of course, people are going to say, no, you have to do something about it. But that something is entering in conflict, because to do something about it, you must first put as a foundation the fact that you are not that you somehow need to eradicate that from you. And that is you. You just need to have compassion on yourself. You just need to understand yourself in the situation. And so that is one of the ways, at least, that I would recommend us doing. But it still begs, the need for love, self-love. With that, I go to the end where I say thank you, as usual, for watching all of this or listening to this, depending on which platform you are consuming my content. Don't forget to check, if you're interested in the population of Earth, just that channeling I will leave in the description, and those videos that I will leave also for your enjoyment on Maldek. A very late reminder, but remember, you can use the time stamps here in YouTube so you can navigate the questions if you're interested in a particular question on any session. I do that for your pleasure. And check the description box for anything else that might interest you there. There is material. You can download the books if you haven't. I find a lot of people asking me questions. Where can I download the books? The books are free in LNL Research website. Go download them there and other stuff. I'm done talking. Thank you so much. We still have part 2 to cover more pyramids. I'll see you then.